let's talk about friendships. And these are friendships in midlife. If you're at the age of 45, you are between 45 and 60, you've probably gone through this, or you're going through it, or you will go through it. But there's something that happens to us women in this age group, the Gen X, about friendships. And today I want to talk about why so many of us, women in this age group, we feel lonely even though we have friends. And just to start off, I do have very close friends. I have a group of friends who are very close to me. And then, some friends that are not so close, but I have a circle, and I've been blessed to have great friends who have been with me for years. You've kind of been with me through the seasons of life. So I'm very grateful. So in this discussion, I'm talking about things that I've also gone through and things that I've talked to women that they are going through or have gone through, or they are really like, trying to figure out what's happening. So if you're new here, my name is Janet. Welcome to the Second Act Collective. And let's just jump in and talk about what's happening with us with friendships. There's a lot of us who are lonely out there. We are lonely, not because we don't have friends, but because I think of what's happening to us as we're going into this transition of getting into the second chapter of our lives. So if you have gone through this, and I have, where you feel like your life has fragmented, like there are different versions of you for different people, right? So you might have a friend group that you really talk about kids only, mainly about kids. So we have what I call the pieced out version of you, where different pieces of you are known by different people, and not everybody, not one person knows everything about you. And I think this is kind of what friendships we tend to have, especially right around now, in our late 40s, going to 60s. We tend to have friendships where certain people know certain things about us. So somebody might know, you might have a close friends that you share mainly work things with, or business things with, right? So maybe you have a business and you share a lot of the business stuff, strategy, or whatever you're going through your business, but they don't know much about your other parts of your life, like maybe your marriage, or maybe your workplace, your children, or relationships to do with your in-laws, or your health, or things like that. Or maybe you're a mom. I'm a mom of three, and I have some friends that I kind of talk about kids stuff only with them. So they don't know much about my business world. They don't know much about even my hobbies or anything else. But we're kind of friends in terms of, we have kids that are same age, that maybe went to the same school, or that are doing sports together. And so we have those kind of friendships. And again, I'm not saying these are terrible friendships. I'm just trying to show what happens to us, why we end up feeling lonely. And a lot of it has to do with the kind of relationships we're in. And also for you to know this is normal, we are all going through it. You're not going through something that is like, oh, I don't know what's happening. But I'm just trying to express and really share with you what is happening with us in this stage of our lives. So you have the friendships that are based on your kids, right? And the things that maybe your kids are involved in. And you kind of talk about that, and these people don't know much about you. You might have friends where, they know about, maybe you talk about your marriage if you're married, or if you're single or divorced or whatever, you talk about relationships as in dating, who you're dating. And that's kind of the friendship. The friendship is more about the family, or your marital status, or you discuss, maybe issues going on in your marriage, and their issues going on in their marriage. And that's kind of what the relationship is about. So they know that part of you, but they might not know a lot of anything else. You might also have relationships where you are more, for me as a Christian, I tend to have friends also who they just know me in that spiritual capacity. So maybe we go to church together. We talk, we're in a prayer group together. We do Bible study together. So our conversations are mainly centered on our spiritual walk with God. And that's kind of all they know about you, about me. And those are, a different type of relationship. So they don't know much about your family. I mean, they may know that you're married, you have kids, you have this or that, or whatever you do, but they don't know much about that, right? So that's a different type of relationship. You might have friends that are gym friends if you're someone who goes to the gym. So there's a lot of talk about healthy eating, about working out, about anything to do with that physical side of you. Or maybe it's a running partner, you run together, and that's all they know about you. So what tends to happen to us then is that we have all these different pieces of ourselves that is known by all these different people in our lives. And there's not, rarely do we have somebody who knows everything. You might also have, and this is another category of people who have been with you for 20, 30 years. So they are friends who have had since you were a certain age, and you have now kind of grown up together. You guys have had kids, and you have had families, you have had careers, you have had businesses. So they are more like historical, they're in the historical context of your life. So there are people who have seen you go through things, but they might not, I guess, be as prevalent in your life now, as in they're not so connected to you in your current lifestyle, but they're people you have shared a history with. And so you keep in touch with them, and you're in a relationship with them in that capacity. So you now have all these different pieces of you that, like I said, are known by so many different people, but nobody has the full picture. No one knows you and everything to do with you. And even if you're married or you're in a relationship with someone, you're dating someone, they might just know you on a certain level, but not know all of you. And I went through this. I know exactly what it feels like. Like you feel like there are all these different people who know this about me and this about it, but you don't have maybe one or two people that know everything about you or that are into the things that you're in, right? So you might have friends that are maybe professionals and they have careers, and you're a business person. So you tend to have conversations with those people that has to do maybe with their careers or stuff, but not necessarily, they don't understand your business. They don't understand you as an entrepreneur. You might have entrepreneurs who are friends, and maybe you are a career person. So you don't, that part of yourselves, you don't share because they might not understand that. You might know, my friend is a business, but you are on a more career path. So you don't understand business part with them to even have those kind of conversations. So you see what ends up at the end of the day. Nobody has a full picture of you. No one knows the complete you or even your hobbies. So maybe some people share hobbies with you, but no one knows the full picture of you. And so we have what you end up fragmented. You end up with or just different pieces of yourself all over. And there's no one who knows everything about you. And there's no one you can talk to about everything. So you reach out to different people to talk about different things. This causes a problem, I think, in our relationship. And not that there's anything wrong with that, because not everybody has to know all your deep, dark secrets, and not everybody has to know everything about you. But I think when we have our pieces of ourselves all over the place, we feel kind of scattered, and there's not a real connection with anyone. That's really what this ends up being. There's no connection, a deeper connection with anyone, because nobody knows the full you, the whole you. We all have these pieces. They all have pieces of you, and they don't maybe get or understand the whole you. Right. So we a lot of times have these fragmented lives. A lot of our friendships are very fragmented. And something else that happens that also causes the fragmentation and the many pieces of us everywhere is that even people that you have a history with, you've known for a long time, I have friends that I've known 20 years, 30 years, right? Very long-term friendships, is that when you're growing, you tend to go in different directions. So you might have someone who maybe got married early and had kids, and their kids are already done with school, grown up. You maybe got married late and your kids are still young. So now we are in different stages of life, right? So just by that fact that you're in different stages of life, it kind of fragments the conversation, the things that you can talk about, because they are no longer identifying with like your kids were young. So my friends who have kids who are already in college or who are getting married or getting, they are not in the stage that I am, because my oldest is about to go to college and I have young ones. My other two kids were young. And so the things I'm going through, they already went through. Right. So as much as I can talk about the things that I'm going through, they're not really identifying with that anymore, because they're out of that stage. So right there, there's some fragmentation happening even in that friendship, because we are not at the same place. We have kind of grown in different direction in terms of our kids. Then we can talk about even with careers, right? So that in this friendship, as you have grown together, maybe they've turned to different careers, you have turned to a business. So again, that's a fragmentation that is happening to relationships, that you no longer can identify with each other, because you're kind of running in different circles and just going after different things. And that's not to say the friendship should die or should be cut off, but it's simply looking at the friendship and realizing, why is this loneliness coming up when we seem to have all these friends? Why do we still find ourselves lonely? Because you can be with people, you can have good time with people, but then when you leave that place, there's still a loneliness that happens. And I think that loneliness comes, and people don't talk about this, right? We don't talk about this. We don't sit around with our friends and talk about this deeper loneliness we kind of tend to have, because we are not known fully by anyone, because we are not seen. We don't feel like we are fully seen, because people just see the bits and pieces of us. And it's not like it's their fault either. It's sometimes just, it's what we have felt comfortable to share with them, or their own stages of life and what they are going through. Because I might be going through stuff with my kids, with my life. That friend is also going through something else that I might not totally understand. And so we are caught in between, where we have these friendships. We don't want to lose our friends. We don't want to lose the old friendships we've had. But in that same process, we want new friends. And it becomes this complex thing of like, you're wanting new friends because you kind of feel lonely because you're not fully seen, but you also don't want to lose your friends. And you're caught between being loyal to your old friends and also longing for something else. And then it creates a dilemma in our heads, in our minds. We feel conflicted, like, I should be grateful and happy with my friends, and we are. But at the same time, you're like, I really would like to have some new friends for this part of me, or maybe you're going into something new, and you're trying to have friends in that new thing that you're doing, because that's the version of you. So you can still feel lonely with loads and loads of friends, because a lot of times you don't have to be alone to feel lonely. And this can happen in marriages too, like married and alone. Yeah, I think I've seen this thumbnail probably on YouTube where people say you can be married and still be alone, because you can be in a family and still feel very alone. You can be married to someone and still feel alone. You can be in a friendship and still feel alone, because there's a part of you that is not seen. And when we address that, when we actually are open about the fact that I feel like I'm not seen or known as much as I'd want to, then we can be able to dissect and figure out what we do, instead of us having this loneliness, feeling like something is not right, something is not, I don't know, there's something missing, and you can't really put a name to it, you can't put something to it. It's just there's that, right? So you also might have this where you have a lot of friendships that are just on the surface. And I think this also happens when we have those kind of fragmentation and pieces of ourselves, that a lot of the conversations are very surface level. And I am just in a place, this is me, and you don't have to, maybe you're not feeling this. I'm just in a place where I'm kind of just tired of relationships that are superficial and surface like. You have that in families as well, where you have people in families that are very superficial. And just my character and who I am, my personality, I'm very honest and blunt about things. Um, I'm someone who, if I care for someone, I really want, I really want a deeper relationship with them. And I'm just in a phase in my life. Again, this is, this is something we've talked about here on this channel, is that you just get to a place where you're like, I am almost 50 and I don't need superficial relationships. I don't need to waste my energy and time and prioritizing a relationship that is going nowhere, that people are not interested in putting in what is required. So you can find yourself in those kind of relationships that are very surface level, and they're exhausting. I mean, and understandably, you might have like the relationship with someone that, again, is because of the kids' schedule. You have some friendship, and it's a thing that you are at the sports field together. You're doing whatever together with the kids and stuff. And even though they are okay, they're just not deep enough, and they can be exhausting. And usually, I feel like those kind of friendships kind of die down as the kids maybe go into something else, do something else. Those kind of friendships just die down because there was nothing else holding apart from the fact that you know you you had this thing in common with your children. But I don't know. I'm just at a place I'm like, they are just exhausting. They take time, and I don't know. I don't want that in my life anymore. I just want deeper relationships. And I know having the deep relationship requires you to have the energy. And in the second chapter, a lot of times you don't have energy for a lot of things. So you have to navigate your energy levels in different things. And even the fact of sharing even your life can feel like it's too risky. Do I really want to go there? I'm just telling you about things that we're all going through. The things that the discussions we might be having in our heads and not necessarily talking to people about. Right? So what we tend to do then, if we're in these kind of relationships, we don't want to invest the time. And I'm talking from you feeling this way or me feeling this way, not necessarily the other person who is a friend, but just us looking at ourselves. You are in a place where the relationship is superficial. You realize it is not deep. But at the same time, you're like, do I really want to pursue that? I'm in a place I don't want to have those kind of relationships that are not deep enough. But the other question is that, do I even want the energy to pursue to make this deeper? Can it be a deeper relationship? And so you can find yourself being stuck, right? Being stuck in just being comfortable with what is easy, which is just keeping the way things are and keeping it, surface level as it is. You can just be like, I don't want to deal with this, and live your life that way. But I don't know if this is what you'd want as a getting to your 50s and 60s. Like, is this the life that we really want? Because we are now building lives in the second act. We are trying to build lives that are more meaningful, that matter. So even our friendships have to matter. Even our friendships has to be deeper. So we're not scattering energy everywhere. And, we are just, everything is surface level. And, you are not deeply involved with anyone to where they can start to really get to know who you are without the superficial, everything's fine kind of facade that we put out there. And something I also want to acknowledge in this is that relationships take efforts. They take, time, they take energy. And sometimes we've been hurt in friendships, and we'll cover that. We'll cover some of the things that happen in friendships where we tend to then not want to go deeper with people or not want to be so involved. But there's an emotional part of this. There's emotional work that is required that you would have to ask yourself if you are ready for it. And the reason we tend to end up with all these superficial relationships is because a lot of times it takes work for you to check on your friends and for them to check on you. And I'm so grateful that I've had friends who have been really a rock, who have, as I've gone through different situations in my life, very difficult situations. I've had friends that check on me constantly when I'm going through things, and I also check on them, right? Because it can be friendship when they're just a one-way street. That's where we end up with all these issues. That's where we end up in friendships that feel like they're draining us. They're always taking from us and never actually giving. And a lot of friendships can be like that, especially at this age. And that's another reason why people end up not pursuing friendships, because they're like, I'm so tired of people just draining me. And I being the emotional, what I call the emotional dumpster, and there's nothing in return. So the emotional work, the labor that has to be put in is you might need to be maybe you are the person who listens and they talk a lot. So they don't know much about you because they're always talking. And in a friendship, it has to both ways. Both people have to have the chance to talk about their stuff and to be listened to. You might be the one who's always holding everybody's emotions, that people are always going through something, and you're the one always hearing about there's something that they're going through. And it's understandable. We all have seasons where we're going through things. And I think we have to be very aware of this. And I try to be aware of this, that it's easy for me and for you to talk about your problems all the time with your friends. It is, because when you're going through hell, we just want someone to, to talk to release that, whatever it is that we're going through. And it's not easy, right? It is not easy to then be aware that, no, that person might be also having a bad day. So if you feel like you're always the one who is holding other people's emotions, who is everything is being dumped on you about what is going on with them, and there's never a chance for you to also talk about your stuff or have them hold space for you when you're going through, then that will affect again the relationship that you have. And that sometimes just again creates a relationship where there's that superficial surface level thing, because one is always taking and the other one is always the one giving. And something else that we carry is that the exhaustion, right? So you might be exhausted from being the one who's carrying people's emotions all the time. It's exhausting. And you realize that maybe you are not the priority. And here I'm trying to give you all these things of what's happening in our relationships, why we find ourselves where we are in loneliness. Because we are a lot of times going through this, where we are carrying things for other people and we don't feel like anybody's listening to us. We don't feel like we are anyone's priority, like we're not a priority in relationships. And this happens, I think, a lot more in families, even more than in friendships, but it happens in friendships as well, where you find yourself as the one who is always showing the care, going out of your way to show that you care, going out of your way to do things for people, going out of your way to do things. And you realize that you're not a priority. And I went through this in my own personal life, where I just realized one day, like, I was not a priority in these people's lives. I was not. You were like a side thingy on the side. And I mean, it's painful, very painful, but you just realize you're not a priority in that person's life. And in friendship, if you come across this way, you realize, no, I'm not really a priority to someone. Even though, maybe you've known the person for long, but maybe over the years, you're not a priority. You know that you should be a priority all the time. But you know when somebody is not making you a priority. You know when your friendship is not a priority. You just know. You tend to start to feel it, sense it, like, oh, I am not a priority to them. I am like a second whatever. And you're not. Yeah, you're not, where they actually put effort. So let's talk about some of the things that happens, in these friendships, in this relationship we have with our friends. If you're one who is always initiating, and now I'm really trying to cover the things that I think affect friendships, to where we don't end up having deep relationship with people, because we are feeling a certain way. We are feeling hurt. We are feeling like you are the one who's always texting to ask how they're doing. You're always the one making the plans for you to get together. You're always the ones who's doing the follow-up. You're the one who listens all the time while they talk about their stuff. You're the one always, always, the one always. So if you stop, at the back of your mind, if you stop being the initiator, that the friendship would go. And this can happen in a marriage too, right? This can happen with the relationship with your family members whom you are related to. That if you stop doing the things that you're doing, the friendship fails. And I think this is where the loneliness comes in those relationships that we're in with people that don't make us a priority to. And feel so well, like we have invested so much. We keep investing. We're investing. We're the ones who are doing the things to keep the relationship going. Again, this is another one-way street, where you're the one always initiating. You're the one always doing the thing to maintain the relationship, and the other party is not. And it drains you. You can tell yourself, maybe they're just busy. Maybe they have a lot going on, which is what we tell ourselves a lot of times when we're in those situations. And I know this because I've done it, right? Where I make excuses for someone that I'm in a friendship or relationship with, like, yeah, maybe they're just busy, maybe they whatever. And they don't respond to your messages, you text them, they don't respond to your phone calls, or they take forever to do it. And it just gets draining. And you will make excuses for them, because a lot of times we are trying to keep the friendship. We're trying to maintain the friendship, whether it's out of the guilt that we've known these people for so long. Should I just let this friendship go? Or they've been there for you at one time and they're like, well, they've been there for me so long. Should I let this go? Right? So it then creates the loneliness in us, the hurt, the loneliness in us, even though we have all this bunch of friends. But if these dynamics are going on, if these things are going on, where you're the one, putting yourself out there all the time, and making them a priority and trying to make this thing work, it's when you're by yourself, you realize, I'm the one who's making this thing, I'm holding this thing, this relationship together. And if I stop, this thing will probably crumble and there'll be no friendship. So you then have to examine yourself, like, why am I doing this? What is it that I am looking for that I keep doing this and the other person doesn't? Or is it time to let go? Right? So that we are not in a constant place of feeling alone and feeling lonely, when we have this, maybe 15, 20 friends, but we just feel lonely. And something else that also brings loneliness, and I touched on this before, is that the life of stage you're in. And which might be at that time, if we're in different stages with friends where you cannot relate anymore, you might actually need to find new friends. Because this is a seasonal thing, a dynamic thing that happens in life, and it cannot be ignored. And we cannot try to, I don't know, sometimes try to fix things when things have just changed. So just as we talk about seasons of our lives and us being very aware of our seasons and being intentional, I think in friendships, we need to be intentional and to be aware of what is going on, what are the seasons going on. So if you are, maybe in a friendship, you were friends and we're all married, and then maybe one person gets divorced and the other people may struggle to then relate to that person. Or maybe you were all working in a corporate job together. Somebody decides, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to do my own thing, and then I'll do business stuff. Again, it becomes hard to relate because you're now in different spaces, different things. And what happens is, we don't understand where that person is. So we talk about the business one. Let's say the one where you were working together and then somebody started a business. If you are still in corporate, you might not understand what this person is going through, or the exhaustion they feel, or the whatever they feel, right? So they start to have this division in that friendship because you're not being able to relate to what their reality is now in this stage of life they're in the thing that they're doing. And as much as you love them, it can be very difficult to carry. It can be to carry them. It can be very difficult to understand where they are. And a lot of times we don't talk about that as friends. And I think we should, right? We don't talk about the fact that we're in different life stages and what's maybe important to you might not be important to me. What's important to me might not be important to you because we're just in different life stages. And it does not mean that we don't love each other. It doesn't mean that we stop the friendship. It's like simply acknowledging. And I think, again, the loneliness comes when all these things are not brought in the open, when they are not discussed freely, when we don't feel like we have the space to say this or to be seen and to say, this is kind of where I am. And to allow people to even make other friendships and maybe leave the other ones behind. And not necessarily leave, it just means it may look different, because friendships, I believe, look different in different seasons, depending on what people are going through. And let's talk about the things that happen in relationships that can make people not even want to have new friendships. The things like hurt, right? That maybe you felt like you've been in that one lane, one way streets in a friendship, doing all the things, and the person is not, and you've been hurt, right? And it makes it a very difficult sometimes to start even new friendships, and makes it difficult to want to put in again the effort, the energy that is required, because you did so much in this past relationship and now you don't want. But what this does, unfortunately, when we feel this way, we've been betrayed with friends, we have been let down with friends, we have been hurt, whatever, you name it, we then tend to shrink back and not want to connect with others. And so sometimes in the end, we actually end up with just superficial friendships because of what we've gone through before. And I'm saying this because you and I, in this stage of life, we really need the deeper close friends. And so we have to work towards creating the friendships that are going to probably be with us in our 60s and 70s. We want to try and cultivate those kind of friendships. And you can't do that if you're still, keeping yourself and protecting yourself because of what happened in the past. And so we want to have those kind of friendships, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4 people. That is a circle of friends you have that you kind of grow old with, I think, because this stage of life you start, again, the old friendships are kind of falling away, and we want to start developing the friends that will be maybe long term into our old age as we're growing, as we're getting older each day. And again, you're not old because you're 60 or 70. I think age has to do with how you feel about yourself. So, when I talk about being old, that doesn't mean like you are old. No, it's just, I totally believe that age has to do with your feelings about yourself than it is the number. So anyway, so we don't want what has happened to us to keep us out of other friendships, of the possibilities of forming very long-lasting, deeper friendships. So we kind of have to be aware of that, because again, that forms this loneliness that we're talking about, that you have all these people who know something about you, but you still feel lonely because they don't really know you. And I don't want you to stay lonely. I don't want to stay lonely. We want to, surround ourselves with people who we are going deeper into a friendship. And something else to keep in mind is that friendships are not made in a year. A lot of times, deeper friendship, it is a grind in some way of putting in the effort on your part and their part. So we just don't sit back and say, I am, I expect them to do all the work. We both have to do work. Each of you, myself and my friends, you and your friends, we have to put in the work that is required, the checking in, the listening, the being concerned, the buying of the gifts, the whatever you do to make someone feel loved and seen and cared for. Because that's really what we all want at the end of the day. We want people to see us. So we want to feel like we're seen, that we matter, that you think of me and I think of you. And those are things that are important. Not that we're creating our whole lives on that, because really, at the end of the day, it's God whom we turn to for all those deep spiritual and emotional needs. But in our lives, we also want people who kind of reflect that. Because I feel like God sees me, that Jesus sees me and understands me at a deeper level and cares about me and loves me, right? I also want my relationship to they might not reflect the God level kind of love, but I want them to reflect that. So as we are thinking about this, the friendships in our midlife is, the deeper friendship, they require time, they require energy. You have to be willing to put in the energy. And if you're running on empty, sometimes it's hard, but it's something that you're going to have to push yourself so that you have that kind of meaningful relationships that you want. They require, let me just say this before I even go on. What we don't want is to have transactional relationships. Sometimes, a lot of times, we come through this, and this is another thing that can, hurt somebody, and then they end up not wanting to go after deeper friendships and relationships, because they've been in situations and relationships where they felt like it's a transaction, like, it's very transactional. Is in what I do for you, and what do I do for you, and what do you do for me, right? So the surface level thing of like, let's catch up, the shallow connections can feel very transactional. Like, I'm just doing this because I know you're going to help me with this. I'm just doing this because I know you're a connection to get me to this place that I want to do. It's like when people networking, they're doing it, what's in it for me, and they're connecting with that kind of energy and mentality, then it is very shallow, because everybody just feels used, because it's very transactional. It is very much, what can I get, what can you give me, and what can I give you. It's a transaction. And this is what stirs out real connection in friendships, when things are very transactional. Even in any relationship with your spouse, with your family, if a lot of things starts to look like they're transactional, then you have a lot of superficial things. And I think, in my own experience, just being in the Western civilization, where a lot of things feel very transactional in the West. I don't know why, they just do. And I come from a different culture. I grew up in a different culture. So just being here in America, where I am, and having been here for so many years, and there's a lot of things that feel like it's a transaction, and a lot of relationships feel very transactional, to the point that you don't know if someone actually cares about you, or this is about what you can give them. And I think sometimes when in a capitalistic states, countries that are very capitalistic, everything starts to look very transactional, and every relationship starts to look very superficial. So these are things that you kind of have to navigate wherever you are. But we are talking about why we end up with all this loneliness. And I was just been talking about all these things that bring that loneliness, and how do we then, navigate this, so that we don't have a bunch of people who call friends, but everything's very surface level. And what we're trying to do is to create more meaningful, deeper relationships, more relationships where people just know a little bit about you. A lot of people know a little bit about you, and nobody knows the deeper things, all of you, and therefore you are still feel lonely and unseen. But let's talk about what it is. What are we actually lonely for? Why is this feeling coming up or feeling lonely? Why do we sense this? Especially, why is it happening in our midlife? Why are we going through this? And why are we so aware of it now than maybe we were when we were in our 20s and 30s? I think a lot to do is a lot of it has to do with the fact that we are very busy in our 20s and 30s, that we are not taking time to examine our friendships and our relationships. We are just going through the motions and doing what needs to be done to survive, or to whatever, to get that next thing we want, to build with that next thing. So there's not a lot of thoughts into a relationship. So we are, the loneliness is coming up because we really are tired of the superficial stuff, the fake smile and the fake hi and the fake how are you doing, when I know you don't care about really how I'm doing. You don't care enough to even want to sit for 5 or 10 minutes and actually hear how I'm doing. And if I tell you how I'm doing and it's not the pretty version, you get like, you look bored, or you're like, you have this I'm not interested expression on your face. Right? So we get tired of that. At least I get tired of it. I don't know about you, but I get, right? So you are looking for something. We are looking for something at this stage of our lives that is deeper, that I can say I'm struggling. And I have to check this. Give me a minute. Hold on. That's what happens. I actually have to respond to my daughter who's texting me, so because she's at school. That's what happens when you film every day. So here we are. Anyway, I just had to respond to what she was asking. So where was I? Okay, I'm talking about where this loneliness is coming from, why we are feeling this, even though we have a bunch of friends, why do we still feel have this loneliness in us? And because we are looking for something deeper. We are tired of the surface level things. We want someone who checks on us. We want someone who, when I say I'm struggling with something, someone who can sit with me in that space without actually asking. And sometimes asking and wanting to know for sure, wanting to know with real compassion and love what I'm struggling with. And I feel safe enough to explain. Or if I don't want to explain, they can just sit with me and hold that space for me. We want, we want to not perform. I don't want to always act like I'm okay when I'm not. I want someone I can cry with, someone I can talk about the deeper things that, that might be silly, that maybe I shouldn't be, whatever. I don't know if you remember when you were a teenager and with your friends, and you would, cry about some boy that you liked. It was stupid and silly. When you found out that they liked somebody else, and your friends would be there to hold you and just listen to you go on about your whatever with this boy that you liked and probably didn't see you, whatever, those kind of situations. I think even as grown-ups, we want those kind of space. We want people to hold that space. We want girlfriends who are going to hold that space for us. And, that they remember your birthday. They remember to initiate a call to start the conversation. They want you to go out and just have fun for the sake of fun, not because it's like there are all these things that we are yearning and wanting inside. And we also don't do that to them, which we're talking about this so that we can also be better friends. And they are not. Right. So we are looking for a space, friendships, relationships, where we are not constantly performing, where we are not constantly looking like we've got it all together when we don't, where, we can all sit together in the mess, in my mess, in their mess, and not have to always try to find a solution. Right? Because you don't always have to have the answer. Sometimes just sitting together is just the answer is okay. Just sitting in that place. You just don't want the performance. You want something deeper because you also are tired of performing in your own life. And you don't want to have friendships that you're performing in. You want friendships that uh, are more deeper. And why is this happening in our midlife? Again, I'm going back to why this is because we are at that stage of midlife. Why are we feeling this loneliness? Why is this important to us? Because a lot of things have changed at this stage of our lives. Values have changed, priorities have changed. Some people have moved in and some people have moved out of our lives. You are facing maybe menopause or maybe already in it. That brings its own drama from what I hear. And I'm laughing because I'm just like, oh God, help me. I don't want to go through that. So, but I know, I understand a lot of us in this stage, we are going through it, right? And it's not easy. You have identity shifts because you are transitioning from different things. If you watch my other videos, I talk a lot about this transition period into the second act and all the identity stuff we have to deal with, right? So you're looking for someone who can connect with that, with those things that are happening. There is grief of losing people in your life, very close family and friends who probably have died, right? So there's all these things we are maneuvering as we are in this period of our lives, and you're exhausted. And so you want the connection. You don't want to feel lonely. You want the deeper connection because you also don't want to go through this by yourself. Because you have been kind of going through things by yourself for a very long time. And you're in a place where you're like, in this midlife that I'm in, I just don't want to go through this by myself. There is so much going on. And people are busy, right? We are all busy. So you're looking for that deeper connection because you realize you are not seen out there. And I am going to do a video about being invisible in midlife. But you're not seen. You have a society that is not seeing you. So the need in the emotion, the wanting of a deeper relationship is because you oftentimes are not even feeling seen out there. And so it's good to have people that you know you might not be their first priority, but you're on their priority lists. And they care enough to check, they care enough to want to spend time with you, they care enough to want to listen to you, they care enough to want to go deeper with you in that relationship than just something that is like superficial, surface level thing. But what then happens, right? So why is it happening in our midlife? And I just stated what that is. But what also comes with this is the shame of admitting. The reason we don't hear this being talked about a lot on YouTube and whatever. I think now women are starting to talk about it, which I'm so happy and grateful for. But the reason we don't have these conversations even with our own friends and it's not being talked about out there is because there's kind of some shame we feel in admitting, right, that we are lonely. Because if you have 10 friends, why are you still lonely? Again, going back to what I've already discussed, that you can have all these friends and still don't have deeper connection with them, right? But there's a shame that we associate or that we feel sense about us admitting that we are lonely, that we do have friends, but we still feel lonely. Because it feels very contradictory. Like you do have friends, you seem to be going out, you seem to do all these fun things with your friends. So why exactly are you lonely? Right? So it seems like you're living a contradictory life, yet the loneliness is coming out of the lack of the depth of friendships, not the lack of friendships themselves, but how deep do these friendships go into your life? And what are they touching in your life that would make you feel like, I am happy and fulfilled with my friendships, and they're just not surface level. So the shame is there. And a lot of us feel the shame. Therefore, we don't talk about it, don't address it, right? We just continue with the surface level relationships. We continue in relationships where we don't feel like we are being prioritized. We continue in relationships where we feel like we're in this one-way lane by ourselves in trying to maintain the relationship because we're afraid of letting it go. Because there is shame that we feel. Even shame in wanting more in a relationship than what we're getting, right? So there's all this, and I don't know why women we tend to have a lot to do with shame. There's a lot of things that bring us shame that a lot of times it's not even our fault, but we still feel shame. But there is the shame, and I'm saying this so that you're aware that it's okay you feel this, right? Because a lot of us have gone through it or are going through it, but we don't have to be ashamed to really articulate and say what we feel and need and want and the type of relationships we want in this stage of life. We don't have to be ashamed. And I believe us talking about it, naming this thing, the loneliness is really the first step into then getting the kind of relationship what we want, of the kind of relationship we want. If we're able to name something, right? I think a lot of things happen when you can't name the thing you're going through. And it's hard, not everything can be named. But when you cannot name or describe whatever the things that you're going through, it becomes very difficult to fix it. It becomes difficult to even admit that it's there. It becomes difficult to say, let's have a discussion about this and see what we can do. So loneliness is not unique to you. And we are putting a name to it because it's not something to be ashamed of. It's just that you're in a stage of life where you really value deeper relationships in all the relationships that you have. You're in a place where you're starting to become, to voice out, to speak your mind about the things that you want and how you want them and what you're no longer okay with at this stage of our lives. Because the next thing I want to talk about is what then becomes possible if we're able to openly talk about the loneliness. We're able to talk about the friendships and the type of friendships that we want and what we're no longer okay with, right? What then is possible is that you stop caring and stop holding on to friendships that are no longer maybe in alignment with you or that are no longer feeding you the way they should be, that are no longer as deep as you want them to be. You can then give your permission to say, I don't have to do this. I'm not in any obligation to maintain this relationship. I can move on and find new friendships. So it really gives you the freedom. That's what becomes possible, is the freedom that you then start to have. You have, I think you also said being honest with yourself, which I think is a good thing for all of us, is that we can be honest with ourselves about what our desire, our needs, our wants, and how we want things. Because we honestly, I don't know if we have ever been given that chance. A lot of times we're not given a chance to be honest about those things, to be just honest to ourselves about what we're no longer okay with. Like, I'm no longer okay with a friendship like this. I'm no longer okay with a relationship like this. And to give our permission, to give ourselves permission to want and to need more, right? If the relationship is not giving you, and I'm not saying, the relationship is all about you. No, it has to be both ways. You both have to give yourselves permissions to need more. And if the relationship is not working out in a way that you can both get more out of the relationship, out of the friendship, then again, it's time to evaluate and see what the next step is. So you can give, I am giving you permission. I give myself permission to just want to admit that I am tired of the shallow connections. I want deeper relationships, right? I want relationships where I'm seen. You also, in a place, and again, giving you permission to just admit that to yourself and to say, I want more than what I'm having. And wanting more does not mean you're ungrateful, because that's, I think, another thing that we all get twisted and all twisted up in there, is that when we say we want something different, or when we say we want something more, then people assume we're ungrateful, right? Wanting more or wanting something different does not mean you're ungrateful for what you've had. It does not mean you don't appreciate the people who have been in your life. It just means you're at a certain place in your life where you just want something different. You just want something more than what you've had. And it's not at all to diminish what you've had. It's not at all to say, the people that have been in your life or the friendships that you've had are bad. It's not. It's just we want something different. Sometimes it's more, sometimes maybe less. I don't know. But and it's okay. It is okay. We have that permission. So how do we then go about, with these friendships in midlife? Right? Again, you're going to have to go out and put in the effort and put in the time, the energy, the care required. You cannot ask other people to give what you are not willing to give. So you're going to have to do that work of building maybe new friendships and doing what it takes to build the friendship. You're going to have to go and also make them a priority, put them on your priority list, right? Do things that make them feel seen. I believe if we want something, we also want to do that. If we're looking for something, you also want to be the one to give out what it is you're looking for. If you're feeling unseen, then you want to make sure that you make others feel seen. You make others feel special. You make others, I don't know, you not that that becomes your thing and that's all you're doing, but you're putting the effort in the relationship, and that person sees that, and hopefully they then reciprocate and do the same. And if not, then we just move on to until we find the one. Like friendships, I think in midlife, they are difficult, because all the things that we've been talking about, old friends, old habit, whatever, all the things we've talked about, everybody's going through that, right? So it's just not you and I, even our friends are going through that. So there are all these dynamics we're all having to waddle through, but it doesn't mean we don't, either, maybe enhance the relationships we have if they're not where you want them to be. Just having that discussion and like, I really want something deeper here and I'm not getting it with the friends that you have, or even starting new friendships and, making your expectations known of what you're looking for in a friendship, so that you are all at the same level and you can really grow into your old age or whatever together, having a deeper connection. So you are not broken for feeling lonely. There's nothing wrong with you. Again, I'm just saying this before I leave here, is that you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. And admitting it doesn't make you a bad person. It's simply the first step to us getting what we need, what we desire, and putting us into that space where we can speak for ourselves what we need. And something else, it's not an overnight. If you're starting new friendships, you have to go out and make the connections. You have to put yourself out there. You can't just be like at home, like, oh, I want a deeper connection, and you're not doing anything about it. So you're going to have to do something. But it's not overnight. It's not one conversation. It's a long process of getting to know someone, getting to pour into them, and then pouring into your life and seeing how that goes. It's just, it's like what you have to go through when you're dating someone. You have to pour in and they have to pour into you. And really, that's how we do really any relationship that's going to be deeper and more meaningful than just having, surface level. And also know that loneliness is not permanent, right? You might be going through this right now, but it doesn't mean it's permanent. It doesn't mean it has to be like this all the time. Again, you're going to have to take some action, but loneliness is not permanent. You even listening to this and kind of maybe thinking through what that looks like in your life, where you need to improve, where you might need to have discussion with your friends, or where you need to find your friends, you are in the right step. And it doesn't have to be a permanent thing. You don't have to sit in your house and wallow about how lonely you are. There's something that can be done. And this is kind of the first step we're talking about. And just, stop pretending that you're fine with friendships that you're not fine with. It's another thing that you can do so that you kind of get yourself out of situations that you no longer are like, okay, this is no longer working for me. And just admitting to the friends you have that maybe this is not the friendship you want and what you're looking for, because sometimes they feel the same way, but nobody has the guts to say it. So you having that courage to even say, I would like a deeper relationship. I would like us to do this. I would like to make effort here. I would like to do this, can actually change even the current relationships without you having to go, find other thing and other friendships. But this is where we are. And our lives can be better and richer by us kind of acknowledging all these things and saying, I just want something different. This is part of the transitioning we're doing into a second act. This is the courage, the boldness that is required, is that we are, not only are we to be bold in even the things that make us money, we are to be bold in the relationships that are foundational to us, that sustains us. And these are the things that we have to do and have this conversation. So I hope this was helpful to you. And I hope it gives you something to think about. And in the comments, let me know what's going on with your friendships. If you're having a hard time making friendships, or where you are in terms of friendships in your life. And let's talk about it in the comments. And again, my name is Janet, and I will see you next time.